Hey, Shankar.
Good, Bede. How are you?
Good. How are you going?
Good, good.
Now, what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the subject of performance of action with proper attitude, which is a phrase we use in Vedanta. And it's very important. There's a very important and highly relevant, thing to do with this in terms of our happiness and all of that stuff. So I want to go into that. So let's just talk about performance of action with proper attitude. Okay?
Okay.
Now, before I can perform an action, a proper action with proper attitude, I have to be able to actually see very clearly what is. And if I don't have an attitude of graceful acceptance, first of all, I won't be able to see clearly what is required. So graceful acceptance gives me a clear view of what is.
Can you clarify what do you mean by what is? I've heard that, you won't be able to see what is. What exactly is what is?
Oh, okay. It's a good point. Sometimes people make this into something very kind of spiritual and arcane and sort of like, this the be in the now business, right? So we're not talking about that. Now, what we're talking about is that when you look at what life actually consists of, imagine that you've got this hourglass. And what happens is one grain goes through the hourglass at a time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is that life consists of a series of moments that we're facing. And those moments consist of what is happening and our reactions to what is happening. That's what our life is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Agree.
That's
yeah,
what
makes
so
sense.
what is happening. So when we say seeing clearly what is, we don't mean it in some philosophical sense, I know what life is. We're talking about being able to face and see clearly what is, in the sense of what is happening at this particular moment. And we want to be able to respond to that particular moment by performing an action with proper attitude. And this is different from, say, reactions. You see, when I'm reacting, what happens is between me and that present moment, there's this screen of reactions. It blocks my view, my clear view of what is happening. That's why graceful acceptance is so important, because when I'm, even unpleasant facts, if I'm gracefully accepting them, I can see those facts clearly. And because I see those facts clearly, I can respond.
So you're drawing a distinction between reacting and responding. So you're saying reacting does not have the filter of the right attitude.
Yeah, that's right. When you're reacting, it is not proper attitude in the sense that we're going to be talking about. Do you see what I mean? And also, when you're reacting, you can't perform an action. You're just being carried by the reaction. Like, when we're caught up in sadness or we're caught up in worry or we're caught up in anger, do you notice that we're kind of like carried along by the reaction?
Yeah. It's almost involuntary, so to speak.
Well, it is. Yeah, the being carried away. Once we're carried away, it is involuntary. It's kind of like a mindless dramatization, and we're not. And when we're caught up in reaction, we're not really. It's not possible to see. Excuse me. It is not possible to see what is happening. We're not even so, and so it's very important to be able to respond, to be able to perform an action. Now, there's another issue with this, is that, you see, when we approach people, now I'm going to take to show clearly what I mean by performance of action with proper attitude, I'm going to talk about the common thing is that often what we find is that as human beings, we suffer from we feel ourselves, we become a consumer of praise and approval. We want to get praise and approval.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So we want to get
all of humankind does that, doesn't it?
That's right. There's a common orientation of where we believe here we're feeling a sense of self-disapproval. This is emotionally painful. This is psychological misery. And out of this misery arises a longing. I want to get approval from others so that I can feel approval in myself. And so then we have a desire, which is a pressure to act. And we become also a wanter. I want approval. And in order to get it, I become a getter. I'm going to get. So when I approach people, I have the attitude of a consumer.
Okay.
I have an attitude of a consumer. So it's not that I'm so much caught up in reaction.
So it's more or less what's in it for me every moment.
Well,
when
yes.
You're a consumer.
Well, in the sense that when I'm with people, how am I doing? Am I getting the approval I want, or am I getting? I become, with this attitude of being a consumer of approval, I'm constantly having experiences of approval and disapproval. I become a consumer of approval, and I become a consumer of disapproval. And when I'm getting the approval, I feel good about myself because inside now I find I'm acceptable. But when I get rejection or non-approval, I feel bad about myself. And so what I'm doing is I'm performing actions in relation to other people, but I'm doing it with an attitude. I've got an agenda. I'm trying to get approval.
Okay.
Are you with me? So that's in terms of Vedanta, that's not performance of action with proper attitude. Now, the attitude, you see, when I'm self-conscious with others, imagine, have you ever had the experience where you can sometimes be a bit self-conscious in relation to other people?
All the time.
Right. So what happens is I'm aware of myself as an object of other people's perception.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here I am, I'm looking at myself in a certain way. And I'm going, okay, this is me, and they're looking at me, and how am I doing? But you see, they're not really looking at me. They're looking at an idea I have of me. You see, it's not me as a conscious person relating to them. I'm presenting myself. I'm trying to be a good look in my own eyes and a good look in the eyes of other people. So I have a conception. What type of person do I have to be in order to be acceptable? Now,
it's a notion that I have.
It's a notion. It's a notion. But I take this notion very seriously because when people see me as this notion, which obviously can't be me, what I am is obviously not a notion. But however, when I'm caught up in this whole process of looking good in my own eyes and in the eyes of other people, it becomes inordinately important that people see me as this notion. So let's say I'm a nice, good, and friendly guy. I want to be seen like that. And then you come along and you say, Bede, you're a bit of an idiot. Oh, I feel crushed. But what's actually crushed is the notion. It's not me, but the experience is that I am, as an idea, I experience myself as deflated. So when you approve of me, I feel inflated as an individual. In other words, this idea of myself, this inflated idea of myself, just a fiction, by the way, but and then I blow it up. It's like a balloon. I blow this balloon up. Oh, good. Shankar likes me. The next moment, Shankar says I'm a bit of an idiot. Ooh. Now I'm feeling, I'm having an idea of myself. Again, I'm having an idea of myself. We call it objectification in Vedanta. I'm making myself into an object that I can describe. I am now a bit of an idiot. So when you call me an idiot, I actually feel like I am an idiot. So I'm trying, with relation to other people, my agenda is this. I'm performing actions in such a way that I will get approval. So I'm what Swami Dayananda calls a consumer. I'm a getter. I want to get happiness from other people. Now, he contrasts that with being a contributor. Now, why is this so important? Why is it so important to be a contributor in terms of this other thing? See, so what we're told is performance of action with right attitude. Now, the attitude is an attitude of a contributor. Now, the interesting point is why this is so important. That's what's very interesting, because what happens is if I'm relating to people, and you see, what is the solution to this self-consciousness? How am I doing? Am I doing good now? Am I getting approval? That type of self-consciousness is self-obsession, self-concern, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also it's very uncomfortable for me. Do you see what I mean? And the thing is that when I'm self-concerned, can I really see what is happening?
You're right. You're right. So you're not open to what's happening.
Not really. Because I'm too caught up in myself. I'm not really aware of what is happening. Now, the wonderful thing about a life of what they call Dharma, is that we can shift away from this self-obsession and self-concern. It's a fundamental shift from that to an attitude that enables us to come to situations, and we're interested in, when we're living a life of Dharma, which is living a life that is proper to us as human beings.
Can you expand on Dharma again? What is the definition of Dharma?
Well, Dharma is in the sense that when we're facing a situation, and we're facing it with the right attitude, because if we don't facing it with the right attitude, we will not be able to see it in the light of Dharma. Okay, because we'll be too self-concerned. But when we're facing an attitude from the right, when we're facing a happening, a moment, from the right attitude, what happens is we see what will be needed. What would be the right thing to do? What would bring value to this situation? What is the very thing I need to do to bring value to this situation?
Value to who?
To the situation. It might be a person, like, for example, your room's untidy, you just notice it, so you tidy it. Or a person needs to be listened to, so you listen.
Okay.
Or you need to do something. You see, it's whatever is needed. So every situation that comes to us has a requirement, if you like. And so when we meet, when we can see what that requirement is, and we actually can form our actions, we perform actions to meet the needs of that moment in terms of what will be right and proper. But very importantly, it's composed of two things, the life of Dharma. First of all, non-harmfulness. We don't bring harm. Okay? And secondly, we bring the value that's needed. And this is a highly different way of life than the way of life of trying to get approval from others, for example. I'd like to stick to this example of trying to get approval. So when I approach a person, right? When I approach a person, if I'm approaching them with an attitude of, how can I get approval from them? That is the attitude of a getter, isn't it?
Yeah, the consumer. Yeah.
I
want something.
I want something.
Yeah.
And because of that, I won't be able, I won't be able to see what actually the situation needs in terms of what value I can contribute to it. I will be seeing rather in the light of, how can I get the approval? How can I brag subtly? How can I be with this person so they will like me?
So you can't see the situation objectively. You're
No.
subject because of your subjectivity.
No. When you see, trying to get happiness from the world, actually, good point, is actually living out our subjectivity. It's our subjective notion of what is important, and this subjective notion is, I need other people to make me happy. Whereas when I'm living a life of Dharma shifts me out of that unhappiness, actually. Because then I don't, the interesting thing is that in the light of when I approach people, if I approach people in a dharmic way, it helps me actually become unafraid of people, because I'm no longer angling for the approval.
Yep.
What I'm looking at is, what can I bring to this situation which will be helpful? What, do I need to listen here? Am I talking too much here? So what is determining my actions is what is needed.
So you're shifting the focus from the consumer subjectivity to a more giving objectivity. Is it?
That's right. An attitude of a contributor. And then, you see, then I'm performing action with the right attitude. And that
you keep using the word right attitude.
Yes.
Right and proper. You've used that a few times. And you put two facets to it. One is that it should be bringing, it should be one of value, that bringing in values. Is it?
No, not value. No, bringing a value, not values.
Bringing a value.
See, for example, let's say, for example, you need to be listened to. You're unhappy, and I listen to you. The very act of listening is bringing value to that situation. It's doing what's needed, and the situation improves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But what's important here is it brings me into harmony with that moment. So I come into harmony with this particular moment by performing an action with proper attitude. And that affects the quality of my mind. Now, Puja Swamiji says a very important thing about this. Every time I perform an action with proper attitude, I am building in myself peacefulness. I'm freeing myself from friction with what is, because I'm in sync with what is happening. Does that make sense? So you see, and because I'm in sync with what's happening, because my relation to what is happening is right, okay, so it's not only right in terms of graceful acceptance, it's also right in terms of action, that has a profound effect on the quality of my mind.
Right from whose perspective, Bede?
No, it's not. No, it's not right from perspective. It's not right and wrong. It has nothing to do with the cultural notions of right and wrong. Okay. When I have to open a door, there's a right way to use the key and there's a wrong way. So we're talking about something here that transcends culture and transcends our notions about right and wrong. What we're doing is we have a happening in front of us in relation to other people, because that's what we're talking about. So we're in the presence of another person. Now, if I start going off like a motor mouth, which I can do at times because I'm a bit of a talker, and I'm not listening, right?
Okay.
Is that meeting what's needed?
No, it's not.
So that's what we mean by wrong. So my actions are not meeting what's needed. Okay? Because I'm being a consumer. I'm more interested in hearing my own voice, because by obsessively talking, it relieves anxiety, for example.
So are you saying that every situation there is an optimal way of response, and by first of all, by this attitude of uh, accepting what is, and also this attitude of contributing, in other words, doing what is right for the moment, you are bringing in that extra perfection to that moment.
Yeah, it's like, let's take it for example. I don't want to use the word perfection because it's a relative universe and whatever. But what I'm saying is this: let's say your wife is angry at you. She's talking to you in a terse voice, and she's annoyed and angry, and you're finding that unpleasant. That's the happening.
Yep.
Now,
I can relate to that.
If you're a consumer of love, my wife's job is to love me. You will be upset with her, and you will want to fight her. That's just a fact.
Yep.
Now, but if you have the correct attitude, in other words, I don't want to be harmful, so I don't want to bring harm to a situation, and I want to bring value to this situation. That enables you to see what would be right to do in that situation. See, this knowledge of right and wrong is not a fixed thing. It's dynamic. It's a wonderful thing, actually, but it's related to what is happening. We have this ability to appreciate at any one moment what is right and what is wrong. But if I'm overwhelmed by the fact that I want my wife to love me and she's talking to me in a bad way, I won't be able to appreciate what will be right and wrong. I will just simply start giving it back. Do you see what I mean? I will start to act in the same kind of way.
Yeah, and which will be causing harm to myself, because
ultimately, yes.
Yes.
They have a saying in Vedanta: Dharma takes care of you, protects you.
Yeah.
Without a life of Dharma, we don't see what's there in front of us, and we can't really respond in the best possible way. And if we don't respond in the best possible way, if we don't come into harmony with this particular moment here, it has a profound effect on the quality of our mind. Because have you known that even though it gives a certain satisfaction to retaliate in an angry way, does it ever feel good, really? Does it produce a feeling of rightness in us?
Not at all. In fact, it lasts for a long time, and therefore you are harming. It's not harm minimization at all.
No, it builds a sense of wrongness in us. This is the point.
Yeah.
We're living a life of Dharma brings about a sense of rightness in us.
Yeah.
My teacher said something very interesting to me when I first met her. This is Swami Atma Prakashananda. She says, if you're disturbed, you've been disturbing. How could she say that about me? Because the thing is, it's true. Every time, you see, this is the law. Every time we don't meet a moment in the right way, we pay for it. We pay for it.
Yes. Yes.
We pay for it. So what happens is, is that whether we like it or not, we are always doing something in relation to this particular moment that's happening right now, right where I am. The question is whether what I am doing is right or is it wrong? And so it's an absolute necessity for our happiness and well-being. It's not, following Dharma is not self-sacrifice. I'm being so noble. It's not.
If anything, it's quite selfish in that it's for your happiness that you're looking at.
It's in your very best interests.
Yeah.
And also, it's not related to the Indian culture, the Western culture, or any of those things. It transcends culture. Because you're not conforming to a social pattern that you've been brought up into. Now, we have lots of social habits, habitual ways of acting. This isn't right performance of action with proper attitude. we've got habits that, oh, how are you, da, da, da. But it really involves no actual alertness or awareness of what is and what's needed. That's just simple cultural and social programming that we just automatically live out. When we talk about performance of action with proper attitude, it presupposes an awareness of what is happening. And then what we do is we're no longer conforming to our past, our culture or whatever. We are conforming to our innate sense that's given to us of what is right and wrong. Okay. And this conforming makes us feel complete. Because when my actions line up with what is right, I can't help but feel complete. Yeah. But when my actions don't line up with what I'm right, so here I am, I have this knowledge of what is right. It's intrinsic, it's part of me. When my actions don't line up with that, I feel split. I basically feel split within myself because yep. As a knower and a doer, they're different. So I feel split, and I also come into conflict with the people in my life. So what I really want to kind of make clear here is that a life of Dharma is not a religious imposition from the outside. It's life living from inside out. And Swami Dayananda has a beautiful saying. He says, you don't get happiness from relationships, you bring happiness to relationships. Now, if you've got
you contribute. Yeah.
If you've got two,
that's where
that's the attitude of contribution. When I am bringing happiness to relationships, and that is my agenda, that is my interest, if you like. Yep. And at the beginning, you have to do this consciously and deliberately because the agenda of being a consumer is extremely strong. However, have you noticed that when you say, for example, if, for example, your wife's acting in a way that's cranky or your spouse is acting in a way that's cranky, and you refuse to act harmfully, do you notice that you feel better? That if you actually do not give in to the impulse to say something harsh, for some reason, there's a reward here. There's an inner satisfaction, an inner feeling of wholeness. So this whole question of Dharma is so important to our life and happiness. And in our conversations that we're going to be having from now on, we're going to go into more into it. But I just wanted to show that it's not a religious notion. It's not an external morality that I'm imposing on myself. Yep. It is actually living life in such a way that I can come into harmony of what is, into harmony of what is happening.
That's an important point you made. I mean, that it's not a religious notion. It transcends cultures and all that. That the word you used is that we are born with that innate ability to guide us as to what is right and wrong, and there's in which action there is no conflict between what you know and what you want to do. No,
and that gives a feeling of wholeness. If you see Puja Swami says, you may not want to tidy your room, but when you do, you feel better. It's not ego gratification though. It's a sense of happiness that comes through right action, the right performance of action with proper attitude. And we're going to go into more about this proper attitude, but I just wanted to clarify the difference between an orientation that is based on being a consumer of affection and approval, which produces a tremendous amount of pain because it's like a yo-yo life. There's no peace in it. I feel good one moment, bad the next, feeling good about myself, feeling bad about myself. You see, we want to be impressed with ourselves, but we have to use other people to do it. But we're not really impressed with ourselves. We're impressed with an idea that we hope to be.
Yeah, want to touch upon a point, an important point you made about what Swami Dayananda says about cleaning your room. You might not want to do it, but once you do it, you have a sense of happiness. I can relate to that and to relate a lot of things. So in a way, dharma is doing what is necessary and not what you want to do.
Precisely. It's doing what my teacher calls doing what's needed doing the needful with presence of mind.
Okay.
And the thing is that it's not self-sacrifice because it brings all our talents and abilities into play. We haven't got this crazy, wacky agenda of trying to get happiness from other people or approval. We can actually literally shift out of it. And so what happens?
But it comes at the expense of. It comes at the expense of sometimes putting aside your likes and dislikes, because you know innately that this needs to be done. For instance, going back to your cleaning example, I might not feel like cleaning. I know because I don't like the activity, but needs to be done because that's the right thing to do.
Yes, but it's not. The whole point is this is what is genuinely in our best interests. You see, when we actually discover the value of living in harmony with the whole, living in harmony of what is, when we discover the value of it, because of force of habit, of course, we go against it. Puja Swamiji says at the beginning there's a conflict. You know, you don't really want to do it. But the fact of the matter is the more we live a dharmic life, we're building into ourselves a quality of peacefulness, a sense of rightness that you can't really explain. But the thing is that it's there. It's not, you don't have to believe in this. You know, like what happens is when if someone is attacking you verbally and you refuse to attack back, you may not know how to bring the value. My teacher said to me at the beginning, sometimes it's just best to do nothing. You may not know what to do, but first of all, just don't do any harm. So I'd often find myself standing there, not saying anything, wanting to say something, not knowing what to do, but I just simply did nothing. Even that brings value because at least you don't make it worse. And then what happens is you can then bring something to it. You can bring the value when you see the opportunity. You can bring the value, but it is an entirely different perspective. So being non-harmful and beneficially and beneficially responsive is what Dharma is all about. And it is the only way, it's a way of life that humanizes us.
Yep.
Because of the hurt that we have in the past, we have a desire sometimes to attack people, to hurt them. And when we attack people, we have a desire to hurt them. That's the fact. And that's because of the hurt. And we also have desires to feel critical of other people because that protects us from guilt. Oh, look at that idiot. Oh, can you believe that? So the thing is that from this sense of self-dissatisfaction, many strivings come that are not particularly good for us. But what frees us from this is a life of Dharma. Dharma protects us. It frees us from the inner pressure of fragmentation.
Yeah.
And it frees us from friction from other people. It's a wonderful thing. And we're going to be going more through it throughout these talks. Is there anything you would like to say before we end off?
Very good, Bede. I mean, basically, you made that very clear that, you know, you brought in this concept of contributing, doing something with the right attitude to bring value to the situation, which is innately in us, which is leading a life of dharma, which is in our best self-interest, which made a lot of sense to me.
Quite. Performance of action with right attitude. Okay. Thank you very much, Shankar. We'll catch up again. Bye.
See you.